The Jaguars defense is in search of some help. Is it Muma time? And what does that mean for Devin Lloyd? I'll talk about that here today on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I am Tony Wiggins, your host of Locked On Jaguars. Thank you for joining us here today on another episode of your daily Jaguars podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen, reminding you that we are free on all platforms, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you like and subscribe on the YouTube page as well. Today's episode of Locked On Jaguars is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. What is happening, folks? Back from a bye week. I feel like I've been on bye week for a while. You know, this is my first full week, or my second full week back after a vacation out of the country, and I'm glad to be back. It's my first full week being back when the Jaguars actually have a game. So it's game week. We're trying to gear up a little bit. Quick reminder, we are going to have on Turkey Day, we are going to have our crossover episode with Kevin Oestreicher of Locked On Ravens. So make sure you check that out. While you're walking around in pajamas or doing whatever it is that you do on Thanksgiving, getting ready to stuff your face and watch football and NBA on TV, make sure you listen to the Locked On Jaguars podcast on Thursday. We're talking linebackers today, and one of the things that was supposed to be a strength of this team has been a little bit of a problem, a bugaboo, some early in the season and then some as of late, where these linebackers don't look like they're filling these gaps in the defensive in the front against the run. And mainly they look like they're stuck in cement when it comes to guarding wide receivers who cross their face or running backs, and they don't seem to be tackling well. And that's one of the staples of this Mike Caldwell defense that was supposed to mirror the defense from Tampa. And any good defense, by the way, not necessarily just the one from Tampa, but any good defense that wants to be considered good and be considered the type of defense that can hold the fort down, you have to be able to tackle wherever you touch a guy. That means that's where he needs to go down. It doesn't need to be a couple of yards down the field. It doesn't need to be dragging you. He doesn't need to give you the stinky leg in space and create those extra yards. There have been times the Jaguars have had people stuck behind the first down marker, and they've gotten away from them. Something happened in the last game in Kansas City. I saw Chad Muma a lot more than I was used to seeing Chad Muma. So one of the things that I was wondering was, is Devin Lloyd hurt? Is he banged up? I don't like to draw conclusions. Don't like to sit there and create some sort of story where the story, doesn't really create itself and come up with conspiracy theory. So I was waiting for an injury report that said that Devin Lloyd was banged up. That report never came, or that he twisted something. And it actually never manufactured itself or was manufactured by anybody. It just did not happen. So my thing was, wait a minute, is he tired? Is he dead-legged? Because sometimes Devin Lloyd does look a little dead-legged. Didn't happen. My man Demetrius Harvey wrote an article today that mirrored some thoughts that I had in a conversation that I'd also had with him a little bit about maybe they're going to take a little bit more of a look at Chad Muma. And I think when you look back at the way that Devin Lloyd has played as of late, he ran into his own guy at one point the other day and knocked him down. And you look back at the fact that in critical times in the game against Kansas City, Chad Muma was in the game. And when you take a look at the fact that a bit of a spark, and he was a 3rd-round pick, even though Devin Lloyd was a 1st-round pick. Let me give you a little bit of that. So some people think, okay, that's 2 rounds, right? That's 2 whole rounds. It wasn't really like that. One guy was at the top of the 3rd round, and the other guy was at the bottom of the 2nd round. So you're probably looking at about 40 picks, 40 or 45 selections. All we do is look at rounds. We just go 1st rounder versus 3rd rounder. And that's not really the case. And I know several times after the 1st round, these teams look at the number. Like if you're 27 and another guy is 43, or 27 and another guy is 67, that's how they look at that. You also look sometimes at how many players at that position were chosen in front of those guys. You know, okay, this guy was number 4 and this guy was number 8 or number 9 that's the way it's looked at sometimes. So sometimes when we look at draft position, we think that it's, well, they got to play this guy, or this guy was way better than him. And that's not necessarily the case. One thing that I'm going to do when I talk to you in segment 2 about both of these players and about what Chad Muma can add is, Devin Lloyd was known as a bit of a tweener. And I know that there's a draft, a pre-draft show I did somewhere back in the day where I said I really wasn't that keen on him. And I kind of made myself like him a little bit because I saw what the Jaguars were doing in terms of creating more size and at these positions. But he kind of reminds me a little bit of Miles Jack in the way that you have the athleticism. It seems like he's a guy that probably moved around a lot in college and didn't play one position. And he instinctively may not be like a guy like Jack Sanborn, who was like a 4th-round pick or 4th or 5th round pick, who's starting in Chicago and is all over the field. It's like guys like that played linebacker as a kid, and that's all they ever did. They're just a Mike linebacker. So I thought the Jaguars were probably trying to create a certain situation, and maybe Devin Lloyd would be a sort of a piece that they move around a little bit. And then I look back and I said, well, I remember when Fred Warner was in college. And Fred Warner was a 6'3", 228-pound safety / linebacker, right? And how Fred Warner was able to adjust, Fred Warner for the San Francisco 49ers, how he was able to adjust now become one of the 5 best linebackers in the NFL. And I was hoping that the same thing would happen for Devin Lloyd. And I don't think the jury's out that those things might happen for Devin Lloyd. But to say at this point that if the team wants to start taking a look at Chad Muma, who most people thought was a throwaway pick, and I never did. I always thought the idea was, and this is what I thought when they picked him, that he was just too good for them to pick. He played real well at the Senior Bowl, that he was too good for them to pass up. And I thought what was going on, in their mind a little bit was, okay, we signed Foye Oluokun to a deal for 3 years. Most of these deals are 2-year deals, though, because they're front loaded. So if Foye Oluokun does what he's supposed to do, which he's playing pretty well right now, in 2 years, when we have to make a decision on his 3rd year, we don't have to go outside or use a draft pick. We'll have a guy already. And then the Jaguars would ride out for the next 7 or 8 years with Oluokun and Chad Muma side by side. Well, it appears now that it's going to be either Muma or Devin Lloyd, and nobody said that. But I think you're going to start seeing a little bit more of Chad Muma. This team is trying to win games. I still think Devin Lloyd can turn into a really, really good player because he's flashed that, and I think he works hard. The problem is you're not talking about a 21-year-old rookie. You're talking about a guy who's 24 years old as a rookie right now in the National Football League. So you have to wonder a little bit about the upside. Chad Muma's 23, so both of them should be producing right now and should already instinctively know how to play this position, even if it's the NFL. You've seen linebackers coming to the NFL. I just mentioned one. Jack Sanborn is lighting it up in Chicago. So the thing is I think we're going to start seeing a little bit more of Chad Muma, and this is where there's a difference between Doug Peterson and Trent Baalke, because if you're already using your third round pick to play in front, and I know what GMs do, and I think Trent will probably do the same thing. That if Muma turns out to be really good and Devin Lloyd doesn't, then you can say, well, ooh, look at him. We hit on this guy, even though we missed on this guy, and you'll use the fact that you hedged your bets and got a good player in the third round to kind of make people overlook the fact that, yeah, but you used the first round pick and then you also traded a fourth round pick to move up to the guy that you're now replacing. And I'm not saying he's going to be replaced. Nobody's told me that. But if you look back at what happened in Kansas City and there's no injury attached to Devin Lloyd, and you see that Chad Muma had 7 tackles, and Devin Lloyd had 3, and Muma was in the game in the second half when the Jaguars were trying to make their run. I think the writing's on the wall that the Jaguars will do any and everything that they can right now to start winning. And you know what? Good for them. I think they should do that. And I'll tell you what, we'll talk more about it here in segment 2 on Locked On Jaguars when we're going to talk. Is this good for Jacksonville if you see more of Chad Muma, and what does it mean? What does it mean for Devin Lloyd, his future, and the Jaguars evaluation process? Today's show is sponsored by Turo. Turo, that's right. Turo is the world's largest car sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want whenever you want it from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the U.S., UK, Canada, and coming soon to Australia. Book a spacious SUV or minivan for a family road trip. Get a hot classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, or holiday. Find affordable economy cars as if you're on a budget and just need to get from A to B. Test drive that new electric vehicle you've had your eye on to see how it fits in your everyday life. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms and conditions and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. Today's show is also sponsored and brought to you by PrizePicks. That's right. PrizePicks, man. I played me some PrizePicks and almost won this weekend. But I'm going to keep trying, man, because it is very, very simple. It is a daily fantasy game where you look at the entries on PrizePicks that PrizePicks assigns player projections. And then you have to decide whether or not those projections will be more or less than the designation from PrizePicks. And if you do that, guess what? You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they will score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projection, and that is something else, man. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport you watch, including NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, hockey, PGA, college football, men's basketball, women's college basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, disc golf, Euro basketball, cricket, and more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's just that easy. Safe and fast withdrawals also, and currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play fantasy sports, daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit 100, PrizePicks will give you 100. If you deposit 50, PrizePicks will give you 50. Don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On to sign up for an instant deposit match when you use that Locked On promo code. All right, rolling along here on today's episode of Locked On Jaguars. I ain't gonna tell you what day it is because you might listen to this at any time. But we're talking Chad. Chad Muma is a first-year player, a rookie out of Wyoming who played really, really well. I saw him at the Senior Bowl, and he was out. To really, really make himself get noticed. at the Senior Bowl. He ran and flowed to the ball really, really, really well, and looked like a guy who was going to be. I thought he was primed to be a second-round pick. I know some projections. They thought that Chad Muma would be a fourth-round pick, and then as the process kept going with his length, his height, and his speed, and the way that he ran to the ball, two real good risers were him and a kid named Brian Asamoah out of Oklahoma. And I saw him at the Senior Bowl, and there was a lot of the same accolades that were given to him. So when the Jaguars picked him, I wasn't surprised. He was one of the people that I had on the radar for the Jaguars. I did not have Devin Lloyd on their radar. I thought he would actually be gone by the time they got to their second selection, which he would have been had they not traded up. But even before they traded up, I thought that he would be gone. There were some people that had him going in the top 15. I never had him that high, but knowing the draft process, I thought he would be gone and be really unreachable. And the only thing the Jaguars would have come up for would be a wide receiver. But they came up and got him late in the first. I think when Quay Walker went off the board, that's why they moved up to pick him up, because I think Quay Walker was another player who was really high on their list. That means they would have gone double. They would have went back to back for Georgia players. And I think Muma was a guy that they probably had on their radar as well. But when they got Devin Lloyd and they took Devin Lloyd, that they would come back and Chad Muma wouldn't be there. And I think after they picked Luke Fortner, and then they still had another third-round pick, and when they looked up and saw Muma was there, I think they were probably shocked and surprised. I had no idea they were going to double dip at linebacker in the first round and then come back in the third round, but they did. So fans wondered, what would this mean? What would it mean for Chad Muma? And the scenario that I had was, well, he'd be the third inside linebacker because they don't play Shaq Quarterman, and that he'd come in instantly and provide depth in case one of those other guys got hurt, or he would provide substitution to be able to play when guys got tired. So now it looks like he's going to get a little bit of a bigger role, and it's going to be at the expense of Devin Lloyd. What does that mean for Chad Muma? Good for you. Best player can play. You go get it. It happened here with Yannick Ngakoue and Dante Fowler. One guy was a first-round pick, and another guy was a third-round pick in another year. He outplayed him. He started playing in front of him, and eventually they got rid of Fowler. If that's what has to happen, that's what has to happen. But a bigger picture says that Devin Lloyd just has to get better. There was talk earlier this year, after like 3 or 4 weeks, that he was going to win Rookie of the Year. There was a lot of talk in the offseason that he was the Jaguars' best defensive player, and I thought that was all premature because he missed so much time in training camp. A lot of mistakes that he made early were made up for by making big plays that were instinctive. And a lot of the mistakes that he made early were looked over because he actually made some big plays. But now that teams have tape on you, he's making some fundamental mistakes, and he looks dead-legged. He looks like a plotter. He doesn't look fast. So if Chad Muma takes that position and Foy Oluokun continues to play, I don't know how Devin Lloyd could ever get his job back, honestly. And if he doesn't get his job back, no matter how well Chad Muma plays, folks are going to say that was a bust and it was a bad draft choice by Trent Baalke. Now, he's hit on some of the last couple of years. Some of the best players on this team are guys that were picked in the last 2 years. But the Jaguars can't afford to be missing. They absolutely cannot afford to miss on players. It's just not a good deal. And Chad Muma could very quickly and very easily become a fan favorite here in Jacksonville. And if that happens, then it's going to be real difficult for Devin Lloyd to get his job back. I'll tell you more about it here on the third and final segment of this episode and what that means and what these guys bring to the table and why the Jaguars always find themselves in a situation where they can't walk and chew bubblegum at the same time and can't have nice things. And then we'll talk about some side dishes also for Thanksgiving. We'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is also sponsored and brought to you by BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there From football to basketball to soccer and esports, we've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you'll find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. Looks like the Brooklyn Nets, I keep talking about them because they're always in the news, look like they're at full strength now with Ben Simmons playing better. So they go back to Philly, and Embiid won't play. So maybe you could find a little something to do in there. All right, make sure you check it out at BetOnline because BetOnline is where the game starts. You guys start here with me every single day on Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. We appreciate you joining us and making us your first listen. Make your second listen the Locked On Today show with my man Locked On Sports Today with Peter Bukowski. Make that your second listen. It's the biggest stories in sports, and the local hosts in those respective places can give you stories that go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes and give you all the insights on Locked On. And that's what we do here on Locked On Sports Today. Make sure you check it out. It's available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Occasionally, you'll see your boy on Locked On Sports Today when the Jaguars do something that is newsworthy, right? Yeah. So, not saying that Devin Lloyd is going to be benched, but I do think pressure burst pipes, you can plug Chad Muma right in and have him compete, at least have him split time, and then let the play speak for itself. Let the play speak for itself. Whoever plays the best will obviously be the one who gets the most share of the time. This team can't afford to lollygag and babysit people anymore. They have to put the best guys on the field. And if he's going to play better, it's going to show. And if it shows, then he has to be out there. I know with the stats the other day, he had more tackles. He had more tackles in a short period of time than Devin Lloyd did. And maybe on film, that's what's showing up too. And the Jaguars brass has to do exactly what they have to do. Look, he had only had 14 tackles. He only had 14 tackles with Chad Muma coming into the season, right? Well, his last performance, he got 7 just the other day. And, in the game against where he got 6 solo, 4 solo, and 2 assists in the 27-17 loss against Kansas City. And Devin Lloyd only had 3 tackles. Watch them with intent this weekend, especially with Lamar Jackson. I want you to tell me who looks more fluid and which one of those guys actually plays the best. I know we want Devin Lloyd to be good because as fans, you want your first-round picks to work out. But if Chad Muma can come in and play and do what he does, more power to him because it helps the football team. Side dishes. We'll talk a little bit more about this tomorrow as we head to Thanksgiving. Anybody that continues to call macaroni and cheese, noodles and cheese, you just haven't had it right. And I pray for your family because no one's ever cooked it right. There are a whole bunch of ingredients that goes into that makes that taste what it's supposed to taste like. So, yeah, mac and cheese is a good dish. And dressing, not stuffing, but dressing. You put a little seafood twang to it with some of those turkey gizzards in it, all of that stuff, man. I'm talking about food because I'm going to really discuss that on tomorrow's episode as we head into the holidays. Until then, you guys take care of each other, and thank you for joining us here on Locked On Jaguars.